Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast. My name is Chet. I'm your host. And today we have a really cool artist named Taya Sachs. Looking forward to interviewing her. I have been friends with her for a while. I see her and her husband and lovely daughter at art shows over the years. And she's really a great artist, super talented family. And she's a really nice person and a big part of the Dark Art Society. So looking forward to that. If you hopefully this noise isn't too loud in the background. I had to keep the AC on here because it's just too damn hot. So I also have a little slightly different camera angle today for those of you watching on YouTube, so that it kind of looks like I'm looking at the person. I've got my monitor lined up with my camera, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, so what's been going on here? Gotta adjust this a bit. Just been painting for my Zombie Deathbots show. They're going pretty fast, luckily, because I'm running out of time. But all the prep work is really equaling out to make the painting process much faster. So that's good. That's making me feel good. I got to get back onto tool posters this week, though, because I owe a bunch. And got some frame commissions and all kinds of stuff happening. Anyway, so that's what's been going on with me. Been reading and watching a lot of Mitch Horowitz lately. If you don't know Mitch Horowitz, look him up. He's great. I really want to get him on the show for an interview. What else? Okay, we got to get on with it. Taya's waiting. No new subscribers this week. If you want to subscribe, you can go to Dark Art Society or patreon.com/Dark Art Society and join for as little as $1 a month. Get in the Discord, get in the Facebook group and all that shit. Although I've barely been on Facebook myself much lately. If you want to join at the $5 and above level, you can win the chance to get a free skull from Skull Shoppe. Check it out. Here's one. Here's my two Skull Shoppe skulls. A kid and a woman. Woman, kid, I believe. Adolescent kid or adolescent woman. Anyway, their skulls are great. Website is skullshoppe.com. Kyle's awesome and a supporter of the podcast, and he's giving away one free skull for anybody who joins at the $5 and above level. So, yeah, join the Patreon at the $5 and above level. You get to support the podcast and keep it free for everybody to listen to, and win a chance to get a free skull, or get a chance to win a free skull. Okay, that's about it. Let's get on with the interview. Nobody cares what I have to say. I think that's everything. Patreon.com/Dark Art Society. I've got a Patreon too, patreon.com/Chet Zar, if you're interested in that. I'm showing all the Zombie Deathbots stuff, as you can see. This is a painting right here, time lapses and tutorials and all kinds of cool stuff. All the time I'm updating that thing. There's so much work. If you haven't been on my Patreon for the last 3 or 4 years, you'll be shocked at how much new work I have, because I've only been posting it on there. Anyway, let's get on with this interview. I'm going to shut up now. All right. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy. What's up, Taya?
Not much. How are you doing?
It's Taya, right? Taya.
Taya. I'm
Okay.
trying to get this continue button off my screen and it won't go away. But you can see me, right?
Yeah, you're all good.
Okay, there isn't like a big rectangle in front of my face. Okay.
No. No, I remember for the longest time I kept thinking you were Thea or Thea, and then it's like I think I heard Daniel say Taya, and I was like, oh, I've been mispronouncing your word for your name for like 2 years.
It's Taya. But almost everybody gets it wrong the first time they say it.
Oh, that makes me feel
Sometimes
better.
I don't even bother to correct people. You know, they're like, "Oh, yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, fine." It's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
happening since I was a little girl. So
Yeah, you get used to it, I guess. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I've been wanting to have you on for a long time, and then we talked about scheduling it way back. I apologize for the air conditioning sound. It's too damn hot. It's like 91 right now where I'm at. So
I can imagine
if
in
there's
Monrovia, right?
yeah, it's just too hot. I'm like, I want to enjoy the interview. I don't want to just be all sweaty waiting for it to be over. So I'm like, forget it. I'm just gonna be a little bit of noise in the background. But anyway, yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm a big fan of your work. It's been really cool to see you come up in the scene and everything. And
Thank you.
I knew you for a while and didn't even realize you were such a great painter because I knew you through Daniel,
Well,
your husband. And it's like, what?
Yes.
Then you started showing. I was like, whoa, a totally different, really unique perspective. And absolutely,
so
like, looks like your work and instantly recognizable and interesting and weird. Just the way I like it. Interesting and weird.
No, that means a lot coming from you. I was actually thinking about when we first met you, and I think it was about 10 years ago. You were in a show with Rick Baker and Bob Lizarraga and The Creep and some other wonderful artists in a Universal Studios Monsters show at Halloween Town.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, Rick did all those amazing. Oh, really? How funny.
Yeah, I think so.
All those amazing paintings Rick did, those Universal Monster paintings were so cool.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, well, wow, I didn't realize 10 years. Sheesh. Yeah,
and we were all excited to meet you because we knew your work from CoPro and from other places.
Oh, cool.
One of my favorite, it's still one of my very favorite paintings of yours. One of the first ones I saw was the one it echoes the "I Want You" for the U.S. Army poster.
Oh, yeah. It's called "I Want You."
A creature in a top hat with a gas mask, and instead of a finger pointing, he's pointing a gun at you. Yeah. I thought, oh my God, that's iconic.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll post that one today on my Twitter now that you mentioned it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that was like 2007 or something. It was such a it
was a really long time ago.
Yeah, a really long time ago, and so much of that stuff came true in a weird way. I was just thinking about you can always do that with your work. It's like you just paint what you're interested in, and a couple years later you see it become like a big issue in society, and it's like, what's going on here? It's like, am I tuning into some weird cosmic thing or something, or what? Because it's like it's happened so many times with my own art. I know a lot of other people. Alex Gray's got a kind of an amazing story about that painting he did that has the World Trade Center. Have you ever heard about that? It's
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a Beastie Boy. It's called the Tree of Life, I think, and it's like a tree, and on one side is like nature and it's all happy, and the other side it's kind of like everything's dying. And I think that's how it goes. And it was on a Beastie Boys album cover or insert, one of the Beastie Boys albums. And on one side of it, it's got the Twin Towers and I think two airplanes flying towards it, or an airplane flying towards the Twin Towers. And it was like before that happened. And it's just weird how that works, I don't know how we got onto that, but
no, that's I hate to mention this during the recording, but I finally got that continue box off the screen.
Yay.
So, are you sure you got the beginning of it?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's recording. It's recording. Because I see what you're saying. Continue. No. I think it should be fine. I mean, everything looked good on my end. It was said it was recording. So anyway, fine. Well,
moving right along.
Hopefully. So, yeah, I'm interested to hear about your whole art history because I know you and your family. I know you, Daniel, and Kira, and I know that your relationship to Maude, which is the weirdest thing ever.
I know.
It is especially to people of a certain age like myself who grew up in the 70s watching Maude. It's like it was like the weirdest thing to find out that was Daniel's mother, right? Or
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I don't know if that's okay to talk about, but I think it's so cool.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, because she was awesome.
She
Because
was.
people know her from Golden Girls, but I know her from Maude first because I'm old.
I actually didn't watch Maude when I was growing
Really?
up.
It was
Yeah.
really funny. It was a really good show, like for back then. She was like the
Well,
same kind of character, smart ass.
yeah. Well, I've seen it since, obviously.
Yeah. Oh,
But
okay. Yeah.
when I met Daniel, I was a visiting high school senior at Bard College, and he was a freshman. And he ended up not staying at Bard. He told me he was not happy there with the theater department and wanted to move to a different college. So he went to, after that year, he moved to Sarah Lawrence College. But when I met him, I was hanging out. What they do at Bard is they have senior weekends where you can visit and you stay with some women who are Bard students.
Mhm.
And I was hanging out at the Commons waiting for them to take me into dinner, and so I was sitting there, and this really cute, really furry guy comes up to me and he goes, "Hello." And I thought he was much older than he actually was. He was only 18 and I was 17. But he had a heavy 5 o'clock shadow. I'd never seen that on a guy that age. So I thought to myself, oh my God, this cute professor thinks I'm lost. Like,
And it was
probably
Daniel.
way too old for me. Yeah. But it turned out he was 18. And he said, I don't think I've seen you here before. And I said, no, I'm a visiting high school senior. I'm waiting for some women to take me to dinner. He said, well, can I have dinner with you too?
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's so cool.
So at a certain point in the evening, I ended up ditching the women I was.
Well, I guess you made the right decision because you guys are still together, right?
I mean, I sneaked back into their room, like 11 o'clock at night. I sneaked into the room where I was supposed to be staying, but I don't think they appreciated that very much. Yeah.
Yeah, Daniel's a super talented guy also.
Oh, he's wonderful.
He's really wonderful. Great person, cool guy. I dig him. He made those tombstones for my, I think it was the Dystopia show. He made some tombstones for me.
Sign, that big, that
light up, yeah. So cool. What yeah. And then your daughter's like super talented. It's like you guys are like a super talented family. Her artwork's amazing. Her artwork's amazing. I haven't seen it in a while, but I know the stuff you were showing me before was like, damn, she's like the real thing. She's legit.
Here's at Rhode Island School of Design now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Amazing. She was an illustration major, and now she's switching to printmaking. And cool. So she already has a really solid base in illustration with her education. So she's use a natural as a means to do illustration.
I know, it's funny because I knew her when she was a little kid.
A little girl. Yeah, I think she was like 10 when we first met you.
Yeah, it's so funny. And she's awesome. She's got a great sense of humor too, like great dark sense of humor.
She's really quick too.
Yeah,
she's really good at making up puns. Like she'll put words together and just make puns just instantaneously.
Yeah.
She's and great. Daniel, I mean, oh my God, if I can say in so many ways that if it wasn't for Daniel, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I wouldn't be as happy. We thought we had a connection when we met, and we actually were separated for, we dated a little in college and then sort of went to opposite coasts to work and like almost married other people. It's kind of a When Harry Met Sally story but we always stayed in touch. And, so things with other people didn't work out. And, he would come to New York because his dad lived in New York. So, he'd come to New York and say, hey, you want to go out for brunch? And after a few years, that turned into, hey, you want to go to my college reunion? Hey, do you want to go to my cousin's wedding? And then one Christmas, I didn't even know he was coming to town. I just come home from hanging out at my parents' apartment. They live in New York City. And, I was in my own apartment. It's like the day after Christmas. He called me up. He said, hey, I'm in town. I was like, oh, okay. So we got together and he said, I think we need to make this work as a relationship. And so we like, okay, I would really like that to happen, but how do we make it happen? We're on opposite coasts. So what we did was, okay, how do I start this? Oh, we decided to visit each other's cities once a month. So every month, one of us would take turns visiting the other cities. And I was working in publishing at the time. I was a scientific journal editor. And
Wow.
So I went from taking no vacation and, just to taking all my vacation and all my sick days all of a sudden. Because, and I'd show up every 2 months, I'd show up with a suitcase and people go, "Where are you going? You going on vacation?" I'd be like, "Oh, I'm just going to go visit some friends on the West Coast," because the last thing I wanted was for people to find out what I was doing. And then if
Right.
it didn't work out, be like, "Oh, we could have told you that
Yeah,
wouldn't
right.
work in
That's
a long distance relationship."
yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's like you never
so
hear
one
about
day
those
I just
working out.
showed up and told everybody I was engaged, and they were like, "What? We didn't even know you were seeing anybody." Yeah.
That's great. That happened
Yeah.
with my mom and my stepdad. It's like
Oh,
my
yeah.
mom and stepdad were high school sweethearts, the
Oh.
love of each other's lives, and then my mom ended up marrying. I don't know. Oh, my stepdad went away to college. I don't know. He was like the captain of the football team or something, and
Oh.
he got like some. I think maybe got a scholarship or something, but he went away to college, so they broke up. And then she ended up marrying my dad, having 3 kids, and then getting divorced when I was a kid. And then they met back up. He was back in town. They met back up, and it was like, they finally got together. And anyone that knew my
Wow.
parents knew that they were like soulmates, 100%. It was like, they were supposed to be together, and they pretty much spent every moment of their lives together until the end. It's pretty amazing that,
That's wonderful.
yeah,
And
it's
he
so
was
cool.
James Zar
Yeah,
was his
yeah.
name.
We call
I
him
saw
Jimmy.
him. I watched your movie. I Like to Paint Monsters, and
Uh,
some of his work
oh
was
yeah, yeah.
in the
He's cool,
movie.
right? He was
He
such a
did
cool guy.
beautiful work,
Yeah, he was
really beautiful.
amazing and a super funny, great guy. He was like kind of the perfect figure to come into my life after
Did
the
he actually
divorce.
teach you? Did he teach you how to paint?
No, not really. He did one. No, that's not true. One time when I was I think 9 years old, 9 or 10, he sat me down and he's like, "I'll help you paint a painting." And I was very like, when I was a kid, I was very, I was like, I would always like critique his work.
Oh, really?
I was like one of those kids. Yeah, he used to joke with me as an adult about that. But I was very much like, I don't want anyone showing me. I want to do it myself. I was just like that. And but he sat down and he kind of showed me how to he kind of was showing me how to mix paints a little bit and how to paint. And so he kind of helped me on this one painting that I still have. It's like a wanted poster of I'll have to post that on Twitter today too. It's like a wanted poster of a like a cowboy bad guy, sort of
Oh,
cartoony,
cool.
very Mad Magazine, because I was really into Mad Magazine. And
I was too as a kid.
yeah, it was the best. And so he kind of did that with me once, and then the rest of it was like just being around him all the time was how he would answer questions if I had him. But he went to art school in the 60s, and he kind of felt like it didn't help him, because he it was it was all the push towards conceptual and
Oh, yeah.
minimalist and
Mhm.
expressionism and stuff, and he wanted to paint like illustrations type realism and stuff.
Mhm.
So I think he had this kind of like, and it was the 70s, it was a different era. They had like more of a hands-off approach, let your kid learn at their pace. They're very encouraging of what I was doing, but they he wouldn't step in and say, he would never step in and say, if you did that, it might be a little better. He never did anything like that. And I'm like, I would do that. I do that with my granddaughter. It's like, she doesn't want to hear it, though. She's just like me. She's like, she wants to do it all herself. I'm like, all right, I get it. But yeah, so I think it was more of an osmosis thing, because his studio was in the den of the house.
Mhm.
It was all around. There was paintings everywhere from, I don't know, age 6, or can't remember if it was 6 or 9 when they got married, but he was around probably from 6 or 7 on. And yeah, paintings everywhere, and then an open studio that I could walk into anytime.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
great.
like, you get a lot out of that. You don't think about it, but when you go to sit down and start painting, I don't know what you had school education, so I imagine it's not wasn't this way for you, but I think for a lot of people that want to paint, they just have nowhere to start. they don't know what brushes are like what, but when you grow up and seeing that, oh yeah, the brushes are kind of on the, you put them on the side, they're in a jar, there's turpentine, there's oil paints, there's a palette laid out, and it's like it makes it a little easier to get into it. And plus it's like you're always observing. I was always like just watching and paint and stuff. But anyway,
well, kids are like sponges. I mean,
yeah,
they don't even know how much they're learning, just from
right,
watching.
yeah. And I think just looking at art a lot is super helpful. And there was,
It
like I said,
is.
there was really good paintings around all the time. So so where did you grow up?
I actually,
Oh no.
I grew up in, I was born in Boston. I was born in
Okay.
Boston, Mass. My parents are both from Virginia, but my dad's a doctor. So he was
Oh.
practicing medicine in Boston when I was born. Well, he was actually, I think he was a medical resident when I was born.
Hmm.
So he was working, back then medical residents worked like crazy, like 48-hour shifts with six
Right.
hours sleep in between. And my mom said my dad would literally fall asleep at the dinner table. Yeah.
Wow.
And then around that time they had a baby. So yeah. So yeah, my parents were like real American dream people. They didn't have money to go to college, so they got scholarships to college, and my dad did some work with the Army, at Walter Reed Medical Center to help, pay for his education.
Hmm.
And my mom, same thing, and my parents were both very artistic people, even though they didn't pursue it as, my dad didn't pursue it as a career, but he wanted to be a cartoonist when he was very young.
Oh wow.
And when my grandmother died, we found this box of his drawings from the time he was in middle school and high school.
Hmm.
And they were really well done drawings of action scenes, like athletic fields with all these football players going, and battle scenes with like medieval knights with
Oh
swords
yeah.
and shields
Yeah.
and on horseback, and
Yeah.
and all of them were like, these
Yeah,
struggle
that's
faces.
boy stuff. It's like
Yeah,
any boys that
totally.
are artistically inclined are drawing like war scenes, battle scenes, hot rods and
Exactly.
cars and stuff like that. It's like all the stuff I used to draw too.
Yeah, that's what the whole box was. And I'd never really seen his artwork before, and this was when I was, I don't know, I guess I was in my 20s. My
Oh
grandmother
wow. So you didn't know as a
I'd
kid.
never seen it before,
Interesting.
and I was like, wow, he's really good. And he said, yeah, I was really interested in cartooning, but I wasn't sure I could support a family doing it. So I went into
Well,
medicine.
yeah,
I think
that's a smart
it is hard
choice.
to do. Yeah.
I
Most
mean,
cartoonists find it hard to do, I
oh
think.
yeah, yeah. And becoming a doctor, I imagine he's super smart and super talented to be able to, that's
Thank you. Yeah.
not for
He's a
everybody.
very smart guy. And he actually was one of the people who told me you kind of have to have a day job, don't forget to have a day job so you can support yourself. So, which is one reason I went into publishing, and publishing kind of took over my life when I was a young adult. So I
Okay,
didn't
okay.
get around to doing art full
Yeah,
time
yeah.
until I was middle aged.
Right.
So
Yeah, let's
yeah,
hear. I want to hear the story. Like so growing up, was this an interest, as when you were a little girl, were you artistically inclined and drawing and stuff all the time, and were
yeah,
your parents were cool with it and supportive and all that?
yeah. When I was young, I drew from a young age, and my mother made sure I had art supplies, drawing supplies, little watercolor paint sets,
Mm.
finger paints, clay, and she found local programs where my brother and I could do art. And she painted with watercolors when I was young. She also did some
Oh,
sculpture. She
wow.
showed in some local art shows.
Oh, so you
In
got it in your blood
Massachusetts.
for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And from a practical standpoint, they couldn't have been more supportive. They, gave me opportunity after opportunity to, develop art when I was growing up.
Oh, cool.
What I did with it was kind of a surprise to them. But yeah, I mean, with the content that I now do, they try to get it and be supportive, but I think they're not 100%,
It's a
which I
different era.
understand. I
Yeah.
mean, they came from, conservative background, and so
Right.
they are trying to get into it. And, there are some things that I just don't show them because
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
it would be their bag.
So
Some
did
things
you,
I just They just don't need to see,
Yeah.
like some of the stuff I do for, the really dark stuff.
Yeah. That's understandable.
Yeah.
So did you went to art school?
No,
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 you
I
didn't go to
did
art
not.
school. So
No, I went to Bard College when I was young. I really thought I wanted to be a writer when I
yeah.
was young. So I went to Bard College and I studied religion, which happened to be the academic subject I was most interested in.
Wow.
When I went into college, I thought, oh, well, I want to write, so I should study literature. And to me, literature was great and I appreciated it, but it was just a bunch of other people's fiction. And I wanted to learn a subject to
Hmm.
feed my own head.
Wow.
So I switched to religion and I wrote poetry and I did 2 art classes in college, but only 2. I just didn't know how serious I was about it. And I went into publishing after college. I got a job as well, my first job was at Dover Publications.
Oh, really?
And yeah, a lot of artists know Dover because
Yeah.
they publish inexpensive, they're the equivalent of inexpensive coffee table books. And
Well,
the way they,
aren't the Dover books they're like clip art books? Is
yeah,
it?
they do those too. Yeah,
Yeah,
clip art books.
that's how I know the name. It's like I grew up on Dover books
Oh,
before the internet. If you were like making a punk rock flyer or something, you'd get Dover books and you'd photocopy the
yeah.
images to make collages and stuff.
That's what, yeah, that's Dover's main business model is what they figured out they could do is take books that were in the public domain, they
Hmm.
were copyright free, and the images, they would take the plates, from the old books, and they would put new front matter in the book, repaginate the book, and add new captions and write a new introduction. And I actually got to do some of those books
Oh, wow.
when I was an editor. It's a small company, or at
Huh.
least it was then.
Hmm.
So when I started in publishing, I was offered 2 jobs, one at Cambridge University Press, where I would have been an editorial assistant, which meant I would have, typed letters and answered phones for editors.
Right.
And Dover was the other option where they offered me a list of 20 books, and a few of them were coloring books, but but some of them were really cool. Like they were republishing old art books.
Hmm.
And so I was like, oh, I'm going to do the list of 20 books, even if some of them are coloring books,
Right.
and I got to, that led me to become for a few years what is known in publishing as a production editor, where you get the manuscript for a book and you get a list of the illustrations and the photographs that are needed for the book. And it's your job to get the manuscript fact checked and proofread and get the illustrations drawn or painted and get the photographs acquired.
Interesting. Wow.
So it's my job to like put books together. And so I did that after Dover, I did that for textbooks, kids, like for middle school and high school.
Wow.
I worked for a company, and this was a really high pressure job. It was a company that was known as a packager. What they would do is a packager was a company that would create the package of an entire book ready for publication and sell it to a publisher. So we did textbook packages for all the major publishers in New York,
Wow.
or most of them. But the hours were real burnout hours. Like I remember, being in the office at 3:00 in the morning with a circle of like people with bags under their eyes, and we were eating potato chips for dinner.
Yeah.
Because the deadlines were so tight.
Right.
But what I learned that really became valuable to my art was how easy it is to do research. I came out of college and
fun.
I'd done research for
fun to do really research, fun.
And I got to write some stuff too. I got to write scary and ghostly songs for this book and cassette children's package, and it ended up not getting. It was really cool to work on. It actually ended up not getting published because the publisher thought it wasn't quite scary enough. It was very folksy and not very scary. But I got to write like a scary children's song, and I got to work with illustrators, and I got to go to the library and find public domain, American folk tales, And that was actually how I found the book Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, illustrated by Stephen Gemmell, which I think is just like a Bible for a lot of dark artists.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's such a beautiful book.
Yeah.
The illustrations are just so terrifying.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Yeah, they're wonderful, and his style is just wonderful. I think when you were in that show with why am I blanking his name?
Guillermo.
Guillermo. Thank you. How could I blank on that name? It's middle age. I blank on things that I know.
Tell me about it.
Guillermo del Toro. But there was at least one Stephen Gemmell painting or drawing. I mean, in that collection.
Oh right, yeah.
I was like, oh my God, it's an original Stephen Gemmell. I was just like over the moon, so, live.
Right.
So being in publishing was especially at that job, it was a lot of pressure, a lot of long hours where I just couldn't do anything else. But I learned how to do picture research and how to write and how to work with illustrators. So I kind of knew their process.
Right.
Around that time, I was living in Brooklyn, and one of my neighbors in my apartment building said, "Hey, I think you might really dig this book. I'm going to give it to you as a gift." It was a Robert Crumb sketchbook. And I was interested in art. I'd done some drawing and, in college, and I was just like, oh, I don't know if I'd ever really do anything with it. And then when I saw Robert Crumb's sketchbook, I was like, oh my God, this is fucking great.
Yeah.
And it was just like an epiphany. And I, not long after that, I got my own sketchbook and started drawing in it. And I thought, maybe I should try to do something with this at night. Maybe I could take night classes or something. And I found out that Parsons School of Design, which was in New York, offered classes. And I remember calling my brother up and saying, they've got these classes. One is just intro to illustration, and another is editorial illustration, which sounds more interesting, because you pretend you're doing illustrations for newspapers and magazines. Right. But I don't know if I'm really ready for that. And he said, you know what, if you take intro to illustration, they're going to have you drawing pictures of squirrels. Take the editorial illustration. And he was right. It was the right choice.
Oh, good.
So that was when I started, working with, a college professor. It was a night class. So, other students were either like me, they were taking the class after work, or they were Parsons BFA students who, needed some extra credits. So they were taking night classes. And that just changed everything. It still took me a very long time to get around to doing a lot of art, because I was still working full time. I took classes at SVA too, at the School of Visual Arts, because they also had night classes. I took comic book art with Joe Orlando, who was the vice president of DC Comics at the time. Yeah.
Wow.
And I took a pen and ink drawing class. And that professor encouraged me to do the MFA program. She said, you should get more serious about this and maybe do the MFA at SVA. But I just didn't know how I would pay for it or how I would live if I was, I had my full-time job. I was like, no, I just can't, you know? So I just took night classes where I could. And so that was my art education. I taught myself how to do oil painting after I moved here.
Wow.
And I learned to do it from Boris Vallejo's, I forget the exact title. It's a fantasy painting technique.
Yeah, I have that book. Technique. That book is amazing. I got that book. A friend of mine gave it to me right when I was starting to paint. And I knew I dabbled. I saw my dad work, but the way that he shows I don't remember what's in the book at this point, but I know that there was that one demo where he kind of like traces the image on, paints everything with burnt umber, I believe, over the whole, he outlines it with thin wash of burnt umber, right? And then he paints.
He does acrylic underpainting.
Oh, okay, right.
Acrylic underpainting.
Right, with brown though, or something, or burnt umber, doesn't he? And then he does the background in oil like a sky, like he kind of does wash over the whole background to kind of get that in.
Yeah, the underpainting. I don't remember exactly the steps. The thing that I took away was the medium that he used with the paint. And that was, he was an illustrator, so he needed things to dry very fast.
Right.
So he used a combination of turpentine and blue cobalt dryer.
Okay, yeah.
Mix those two together. And I liked that because it enabled me to let layers dry very fast and I could learn faster and I could paint
Mm-hmm.
faster. The only thing is that it makes the painting itself come out very flat. It looks
Mm.
like acrylic paint.
Oh wow.
Um,
I've never used
so
cobalt dryer. I always use liquid. I've always used liquid, but
that's what I use now.
yeah.
I was talking to the artist Robert Heckman at Hyena Gallery. And, that was when I first started showing at Hyena. I met Robert there and he was also showing there. And I said, yeah, I've been using this technique that Boris Viejo uses, where I mix cobalt dryer with, and he said, oh, I just use liquid. I said, oh,
Yeah, I think cobalt's
well,
like kind
I
of,
tried that to work better for me. Yeah.
isn't it kind of toxic too? That's why I think that I avoided cobalt dryer because of the toxicity too. I don't know. I don't know if it
Oh,
is or not.
I didn't even really think about that when I started.
I don't know if
I
it's true. Don't quote me on it. I just assumed it was for some reason, but
might
yeah,
be.
that was a really an important book for me. It was like one step on the path for me as far as learning how to paint, because I kind of knew everything, but to see it done in steps, because I know there's one demo in there where it's like he painted the figure just with washes, probably acrylic, like you're saying, burnt umber, kind of just out, outline it, does all the values, and then he did the background with a broad brush. And it's like
Mhm.
exactly how I'm doing these paintings now for this show. It's really weird that we're talking about this because I wasn't painting like that for a while, but it's
That's fantastic.
it's
That's
really weird.
wonderful.
Oh, thanks. Uh, Mushroom Head.
Oh, I think I saw it online
Yeah.
too. You posted in the Dark Art Society. Yeah, I think I
uh,
saw it.
yeah. I've been posting them on my Patreon and stuff, but yeah. So that was a big one for me. Just
Yes,
seeing that one, and then another book called How to Paint Like the Old Masters. Have you ever read that one?
I have that one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a great one. I learned probably the most from that book, I think.
that's another book that actually recommends the use of burnt umber as a tracing medium. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have a drawing, and on the back of the drawing, if you want to trace it, you cover the back with burnt umber pigment, and
Oh,
then you trace with that. So
right,
I've tried that, and I like that. It works well. I also find that Sorrel tracing paper works really well.
right.
The only thing is that the graphite gets all smudgy and makes
Yeah,
areas
yeah.
kind of gray. So I guess the burnt umber works better in that respect. It doesn't make it all dirty and ugly.
I
Like the
did
graphite.
I did for these because it's like I'm on this huge time crunch as usual, but it's like even worse than normally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Thanks for
take.
making the time to talk to me at
Oh
this
no, it's
crazy time.
no problem. I just it just every year it gets worse. But I'm taking a year off next year. I'm not doing a show next year
Oh
because
yeah.
I was
Oh
supposed
well.
to this year. I was supposed to, and then Gary's like pressured me. I was like, all right, I'll do it this year if it's a smaller show and I can do less pieces, and I'm not doing a show for sure next year. So
Mhm.
you're not gonna bug me to do a show next year, right? And he's like, no, you don't have to do it next year. But
People be disappointed, but then you'll have more time to do pieces for the show in 2 years.
yeah,
So,
I gotta catch up. I gotta catch
yeah.
up with all this other stuff. It's just gotten out of hand. So I really, I have to get caught up in order to like I'm just, painting a show in 2 months. It's 2 months of painting. It's just like it shouldn't be like that. I want it to be fun
No.
and enjoyable. Anyway, I projected these with a projector. I did them digitally
Oh.
in Photoshop. I painted them. I painted a study, a quick study to get an idea. Then I photographed it. Then I took them into Photoshop and like rearranged things, cleaned them up, painted on top of it, did some photo bashing, like put skies in from just pictures that I had, pictures from the internet, like
Hmm.
clouds, and just kind of change the transparencies. Got everything looking good digitally. And then I get a projector. Then I finished. Now, first I finished the little study, like I matched them to the digital. So it's like I painted the study halfway, finished it digitally, matched the study, and then projected the paintings onto here and then traced it in India ink with these India ink markers I got.
Wow.
And then I just did the Boris Vallejo thing where it was like, you know, blocking in color and being kind of messy with it.
Hmm.
And then going in and getting opaque, after I kind of did like washes, almost like watercolor just to get the colors blocked in. And it's
Yeah.
really a great fun technique. I'm really enjoying it. And
I
it's a
gotta
lot
try
faster. Yeah, it's a lot faster too. It's like more time up front with the digital stuff, but you work all the bugs out in the digital, or I did. And so it's more like and then I got, it's like, this is the digital right here. So I can like use that as my reference. It's traced on, so it's going to be perfect size and composition. And then I just match the colors. It's
Yeah.
like, anyway.
No, that's great. Yeah, because if I actually do some color sketching, I call it a color sketch in Photoshop too, before I start putting colors down, because otherwise I just waste a lot of time. That's the wrong color. I gotta wipe it out. And,
I know. It's a matter
makes the painting dirty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a matter of efficiency and getting a better painting.
But yeah, that's projection. That's a great idea.
That's interesting that you that you worked so long and that you took editorial illustration, that you worked in publishing and research, because it's like that's how your artwork is a complete reflection of that. You know what I mean? Because you have to research. You're doing these weird historical events and turning them into paintings, or weird variations of historical events and painting them. So it's interesting that that must be, not so much that influenced your art as much as that's just the kind of person you are. You're interested in those things. So you got into publishing, you're interested in writing, you're interested in research. And then that also applies to your artwork, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And working in publishing showed me how easy it was to learn more about the things that I'm interested in. It's, I mean, when I'm interested in a subject, I start with Wikipedia.
Right.
And, and then just read, a few articles, just to make sure, because Wikipedia, I like to check a few sources, to make sure I, got the story straight.
Definitely.
So yeah, I mean, my editorial background made all the difference to what I'm doing now. And a person who did also was Joe Coleman.
Yeah.
I first saw his work in 1995, before I was even thinking about painting, when I was still working in publishing in New York. I didn't move here until 2000. But I guess I know it was around 95. I saw some of his work in a bookstore, and I just thought, oh my God, this is biography in the form of art. It's like the greatest thing I've ever seen. And the way he wrapped text around images. And so I wanted to put text in my art. And a few years ago, I was doing lots and lots of text in my art, and people started to say, oh, this looks like Joe Coleman. So I got a little concerned about that, because I don't want to rip anybody off. So now I put some text in my art. I'm trying to make the text and art balance my own instead of somebody else's. And sometimes, here's something interesting that I want to tell you that's related to that. When I first started showing here, it was at Cannibal Flower, which that's where you also started. Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately,
what year was this?
Pardon?
What year?
This was 2000, 2001. I started.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize we were showing
the same show.
Right. We were probably showing in the same shows.
I was told about Cannibal Flower by Miss Mindy and CJ Metzger, their sisters who are artists.
Okay.
And they had some of their art showing in North Hollywood. Danny and I were living in North Hollywood at the time. And there was a clothing store with some art on the walls. And I found out who they were and contacted them. And I said, can you recommend some places I could try to show? And they said, Cannibal Flower. Right. So I met LC, and he, accepted a piece, into my first one. And then I did a few more with him. And then I got pregnant, and I, found regular work, and I just sort of dropped off the face of the earth in terms of art, which, I felt bad about, but I'm really not good at lots of multitasking. So the art sort of fell by the wayside for a few years, when Kira was really little, and, I had to, make some money. Where was I going with this? Oh, I reconnected with Cannibal Flower several years later, when Kira was in elementary school, I guess. And I showed him some work, I showed him Cannibal Flower, and I showed him some LC, some things I had been working on. And he said, they're way too smart, which I think was his nice way of saying that I was choosing kind of obscure topics that not everybody knew about. I think that was his way of nicely saying the topic's inaccessible to people. So that was something I started thinking about. And so first I tried to solve that problem by putting text in my art, inspired by Joe Coleman.
Interesting. Okay.
And then when that was sort of borderline, maybe too much like Joe Coleman, I started thinking about topics that maybe more people knew, or if they didn't, how can I make this visually interesting? So even if they don't know who it is, it's a cool image.
Right.
So
right.
that's what I'm trying to do now.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, cool. Yeah. That's something that I come across a lot with students I have, because I teach mentorship. I have a mentorship tier on my Patreon, so I do have students, and it's like a lot of times they're trying to get a meaning across, or worried about if they're telling a certain story, or worried if it's like, if they just make the image so cool that it doesn't matter. And then if that's my attitude, and then if they want to look deeper, there's a story there for them, and then it'll be even cooler. But the thing is to work as just an image first and foremost. It has to be a great, cool painting that you want to look at. You know what I mean? So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. I think when I was in a show at La Luz in December, the Grand Saloon, and I was talking to another one of the artists who was in it and looking at his work, and he told me the whole story that was behind his painting. And I thought, okay, so I'm not the only one approaching it this way. I want to tell a story, but
right,
I want the piece to be, because his work attracted me, like, oh, this looks really cool, but there's also a whole story behind it. So
right.
So I'm trying to achieve that balance of it's accessible in some way to everybody, regardless of whether they know all the history. And if I need to put a little text in it to, give more information, I'll do that. But the text is not as heavy anymore. Another thing I want to do more of, I did a piece for Hyena a couple of years ago called "The Blue Men of the Minch." It was a sort of a folklore themed show, and the Blue Men of the Minch are these guys. They're waves, except they're also kind of monsters who sink ships. And there's,
I think I've seen that painting.
Yeah, the Blue Men of the Minch. Yeah. And what I did was I painted the blue wave guys trying to sink a ship in the middle, and then I put the poem in the frame around it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so so that way I could get the story in, and so I have the image and then I have the story.
Right.
It's sort of for reference around.
Yeah. That's cool, because that's like it's a creative solution to a creative problem or an artistic problem. It's like a lot of art is problem solving, and
exactly.
It's if you do it right, it's like the solution makes your art better. It's like what necessity is the mother of invention, or it's like sometimes these problems come up, and then you end up dealing with the problems in a way that makes art cooler in ways you never really considered. So that's cool. I'm looking forward to seeing your new pieces.
Oh, thank you. I have a couple of them behind me.
Oh yeah, what are those?
Here, I'll try to make it possible for you to see them.
Okay.
This one is for the Blab show next month.
I know. I gotta do one. I haven't done mine yet.
Oh, you still got time.
Yeah.
This one is this actually does have a historical background. It's the execution of the Romanov family. He was the last Tsar of Russia, and they were led down to a cellar. They were told they were going to leave, and they just had to wait for transportation in the cellar.
Oh my
and
God.
then these guys came in and shot them.
Oh,
and
freaky.
when the girls, you can see in the middle, the Tsar's wife and his 4 daughters had corsets with jewels sewn into them, so they could, smuggle jewels out.
Oh, wow.
So they could bribe people, for their
Oh,
safety.
wow.
And bullets bounced off of them. It was like they were wearing bulletproof vests.
No way.
Yeah, so then the guards had to bayonet them to kill them.
Oh my
And I thought,
God.
how can I tell this story so that it's not totally a gory mess? So I made them into I made the bullets and bayonet strikes into stars.
That is so cool. That's
Thank you.
great.
Thank
Wow. Awesome. I love it.
And this is behind me. It's hard. Can you see it?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it. Okay. It's this is about the defenestrations of Prague. Prague has a history of throwing people out of windows.
Really?
As an execution method. Yeah. Well, I don't think they do it anymore.
I hope not.
But for like a couple centuries, they were tossing people out of windows. And a lot of it had to do with Hussites. Jan Hus, who was a Protestant leader, was burned at the stake by the Catholic Church. And the Hussites, his followers, actually started to gain some power in Czechoslovakia after he died. And they were very resentful of the fact that their leader was burned at the stake.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they had different reasons for throwing people out of windows. A lot of them were just related to, politics,
Mm-hmm.
but it was usually Hussites throwing other people, out of windows.
That's so freaky.
Yeah.
But what an interesting. Wait, hold on 1 second. I love that it's a take on, it's a dark art take,
mm-hmm.
but it's not monsters, or it's like, it's different. It's not, it's different. That's what's one of the things I love about your work is that,
oh, thank you.
You're representing something in the dark art realm, I think, that isn't represented in the dark art realm other than your work, so it's cool.
Good to have a niche.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the niche.
I know.
Every artist needs to have a niche. It's like it's a niche job in a way, unless you're an illustrator. But being a fine artist is about finding your thing,
Yeah.
finding your unique thing.
Well, I just fell into this niche because I love this subject matter. I want to do, sometimes do some just purely creative things, and see what I come up with.
Like fantasy type, you mean?
Yeah, fantasy type. I actually am doing a painting, and the main character is a blacksmith, and there's no story behind it except one I just made up in my head.
Yeah, that's
so
cool.
Yeah, so occasionally, I do want to do, work like that. That's just pure fantasy.
Do you feel? Yeah. Right. Do you feel like you need a story to paint? Because it's like I barely have a story. I just am, not oriented that way. I'm not like I'm more intuitive with it, where it's more about look and just, it's just how I approach things. It's like the way I naturally approach things. It's more about like, oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
And just following that thing and developing it in that way visually. And
but I could make up a story about that.
Oh yeah, no, there's a
coming out of his head.
Yeah, no, there's a story for sure. It's like, but the stories come after. It's like with my book, my dystopia book. It's like those were all stories about the paintings that were written after the fact. That the paintings were intuited,
mm-hmm.
but there was definitely stories there. They different characters that had certain qualities, but I just didn't think about them in a intellectual way. It was more like an artistic, creative, just doing it and then realizing, oh, that guy's doing that. Oh, that guy's doing that. That guy's got, he's kind of an asshole. This guy's cool over here. It's like, and then you realize, oh, there's a whole story there. That was like the whole kind of idea behind the book. So it was weird to it's just like the way I do things, though. But I know other artists that are very, research oriented. I know I think David Van Gogh does a lot of research. You know, David,
Yes.
he
His
does like,
last solo show, he actually put out a book that, told the story, some of the
right,
some of the religion and folklore and,
right,
different
right.
facts behind some of his ideas,
Yeah. And
which
I
was
know Steve Cleft does that a lot, does a lot of research, and Travis Louis has like comes up with stories. And
yeah.
so it's a
I
cool
saw it.
thing to do.
He posts a story in the caption that goes with each one of his paintings,
Right.
or,
I love that.
he has done that in the past.
Yeah. I just feel like um I'm not very talented in that way. Like I have trouble with words. That's why I started doing the podcast. One of the reasons I started doing the podcast is so that I could speak better and have better command of the English language and conversation. And it's definitely helped. But I've always been like, I remember when I was really little. So I remember being so young that I had these kind of complicated ideas that I wanted to talk to my family about and tell them,
Mhm.
and I couldn't verbalize them. And I remember feeling so angry and frustrated. So it's like there's some kind of disconnection in my brain that where my language is not connected very well, or my expression of like verbal language, but I can express it with art
Yeah.
easily. It's like a different way of speaking for me.
Well, it's a different kind of intellectual expression. It doesn't,
Right.
I don't think it means it's not intellectual.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe that may be true. Yeah. It's a different kind of intellect, maybe. But
yeah, no, it is. I mean, I say that partly because you made me, just what you said about your art made me think back to when I wrote poetry in college. And a lot of the poetry I was trying to write was trying to visualize with
hmm,
words. And, so now I'm visualizing things with art.
right.
So
Right.
maybe I should, maybe that's what I should have been doing when I was trying to write some of my poems.
Right.
You know,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
it's conveying ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And some.
mean, I think some of your paintings, like a lot of them, seem like commentary on the industrial age.
Right. Yeah.
With the smokestacks and
Hmm.
and like it seemed like you were conveying, like in dystopia, it seemed like you were just conveying as much of a dystopian atmosphere in each painting as a fiction writer.
Right.
So it's just a matter of which way you express it. So,
Yeah. 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 It's just that's visual art has always been the way I've felt like I'm best at, most comfortable at, most naturally talented at. Like I tried playing music, and I'm a pretty good guitar player. I'm not a great guitar player, but I'm a pretty good songwriter,
mhm.
but not a great player. And it was all I taught myself to play and stuff. But I'm not as good at music as I am with visual art. It's like it's like writing, visual art, music. They're creative in the same way, but they're very different. Like they take different talents or different skills in a way. It's like
Yeah,
the creativity part is the same, but the expression, the more technical, I guess, way of expressing it is different, and
absolutely.
so
Yeah,
it's I've always been, I've always thought that it's important to play to your strengths if you want to be really good at something, you know and
absolutely.
because
That makes sense.
yeah, because I tried playing to things that were like I was good at but not great at. It didn't end up working. Like with my bands I was in and stuff.
You know what you just made me think of was I'm a big Jethro Tull fan.
Oh really? Yeah, Jethro
Love
Tull's
Jethro Tull.
great. They're a great
Yeah,
band.
um, and Ian Anderson he's been interviewed a bunch of times where he said this, in different interviews where he took up the flute partly because he felt like Eric Clapton was the king of guitar and he didn't want to have to compete with him.
That's smart. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and
well, but then the flute became this big. He became the Renaissance guy.
right,
With
right.
1 foot up in the air playing
Yeah.
the flute. Yeah, and that became his thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
sometimes saying, okay, this is my best means of expression is the way you
Right.
find your niche.
Right, right. Yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah, it's funny because it's so not a rock and roll instrument. It's like the least
No.
rock and roll instrument, except maybe the triangle or something. Even the triangle could be more rock and roll than the flute. And so it's like, I mean, that's like a cool artistic statement too, to take something so not something and make it work within in this context where it doesn't belong. You know, that's
Right.
pretty cool. But they're a great band. They're
Oh,
underrated,
they're wonderful.
super underrated, great musicians. They had a great drummer. I watched some documentary on them recently.
Oh, you remember the name of it? I might want to see it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, no, this is probably not that recent. It's probably 2 years ago now. It's probably during the pandemic. There was like a couple of YouTube documentaries I watched. I can't remember. But it was cool. It was like there. It was when I didn't realize that that I forget the name of the drummer, but he was like drummers love this drummer. Like he's known as a great drummer. And I didn't
Why
realize.
can't I think of the name? I can't think of the name of them. I can
But
picture them, but I can't think of the name.
but he's considered a really great drummer. Anyway,
Right.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it was something about there was something about the artwork too. If I find it, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Because they've got cool album covers and stuff too.
Oh, they do. Yeah. Yeah, they do. Some of the illustrated ones, like the cover for Stand Up, where they're all sort of lying down, and it's an ink drawing, I believe. Oh, and oh my God, the cover for Broadsword and the Beast, painted by Ian Mckean. It's just,
Oh, really?
yeah. I actually, when Kira was in high school looking at colleges, I actually emailed him to see, what he recommended, because she was looking at schools in Scotland, and he was Scottish, and so he actually recommended, he talked about Scottish colleges, and he actually recommended some American ones for her to try to take summer courses. He recommended Gnomon, so she took.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Ian McKay, the guy who did that Jethro Tull cover, recommended Gnomon for her to try because she was in LA. So she took a character design.
Oh, no way.
Character design
Wow.
class there in summer, like a week-long class, and she really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know the owner, Alex Alvarez, the guy that started it. He started that business making videos in his garage or in his bedroom, just making video, like digital training videos out of his bedroom or his house. Yeah, now he's got this huge school in LA. It's crazy. I gotta have him on the podcast. I'm sure I talked to him about it years ago, but yeah, he's a cool guy.
That would be absolutely fantastic, because so many people on the podcast work in the industry too.
Right. Yeah. And
he's somebody who trains people for the industry.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. So, okay. I want to know, like, when did you start? When you came back into it, you started painting were you invited to a show, or did you just start painting and then like try and get in a show, or how did you navigate that? That's one thing that people want to know about, that listen, a lot of, artists that are starting out listen to the podcast, and they want to know how you did it, because you're in shows all the time now and selling work and stuff. So
yeah, I'm very.
How did you do it?
How things are going right now. Well, I started in the first place I showed was Cannibal Flower, and dropped the ball with Cannibal Flower at first because I had a baby and I was working, and so then when I sort of picked the ball back up, I showed in Cannibal Flower again, and something happened. There's one thing that stands out in my mind, is Sella Gallery. They were open for close to 10 years, and then they had to close because one of the owners had to leave for personal reasons. But it's a terrific gallery. And Daniel, Daniel's been a big help to me. Like you were talking about Boris Viejo's book. Well, guess who had it, on his bookshelf? Daniel did. So he was working on How I Met Your Mother at the time as a set designer. And one of the actresses on the show was Kobe Smulders, who is Canadian by birth. And so she was friends with a woman who's also Canadian by birth, Shannon Curry Holmes. And she and Kenzie Alexander were running Sella Gallery in Hollywood. And my husband, Daniel, went over to, see their show, and he said, well, my wife, I was doing t-shirts at the time. That's another way I got into art was when Kira was in preschool, I started designing t-shirts and printing them. And Daniel said, well, my wife, prints t-shirts, and, I see that you have, some things for sale, t-shirts for sale. Maybe you'd be interested in showing her work. And so I met them, and I brought my t-shirts in, and they actually, they invited me to do, be part of a 4-person show. And I was just floored as
from your t-shirts.
Yeah, well, they looked at the art on the t-shirts, and they said, would you like to be in a show that we're going to have in a few months?
That's
and
pretty cool.
I was like, wow, thanks. So I was like blown away. And it was the first time I'd ever been in a show that wasn't like 50 people,
Right.
So that was in, gosh, when was that? 2008, I think. It was a long time ago. So I did that show, and I was very encouraged by that. And again, I sort of fell off the face of the fine art planet because I was doing t-shirts still. I was trying to, keep the t-shirt business going, and that went okay. I'm glad I did t-shirts because it actually led to me doing other things. But if you design t-shirts, I thought, oh, t-shirts, people like t-shirts.
Right.
I can sell my art. It'd be easy to sell your art in t-shirts. It's not.
Right.
You make that means you make apparel. So
yeah,
it's about,
that's a whole other market. It's hard to make money selling t-shirts.
It actually is. And we did all right, but
you used to have booths right? I remember yes, I remember your shirts. I remember your booth
at Monsterpalooza.
Yeah, Monsterpalooza.
That's when you first saw Daniel's machines and invited him to be in Conjoined.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
It all comes full circle. Started. Wow, what a trip.
Yeah. So yeah, we actually started doing trade shows together because of t-shirts. And Daniel built me this cabinet, for displaying the shirts, this beautiful cabinet, made out of, based on antique furniture, and he built it up. And he started making his own Frankenstein machines.
Yes, we didn't talk about Daniel's amazing Frankenstein machines.
My God. Yeah, they're
so cool. Anyway, keep going. I just forgot to mention that when we were talking about him in the beginning.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, they're so cool.
But his Frankenstein machines, attracted a lot of attention at those shows. And if it hadn't been for him, I would have had like a tablecloth and a vinyl sign.
Right. That's so cool.
So we support each other's artistic pursuits, and being married to him has made all the difference. In my transitioning over to art.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's funny. I mentioned the cellar gallery thing partly because I started doing dark art. The first few pieces I did and presented to them for that show were kind of dark, and they said we'd actually rather they not be as they be more about folklore and fantasy and not so dark. So
shocker.
Steered away from that. But I still wanted to do dark art. From the time I was a little kid, dark and racy subject matter had always kind of appealed to me. When I was 9 years old, I was in a summer camp with a theater program, and they needed somebody to paint great big standees of a king and a queen, because the theater show featured a king and a queen. I said, I want to do them, and they knew I could draw it, and I could paint with poster paints and stuff, so I was like, they gave me the job to do. And I painted the queen with these enormous boobs. And, those, because it was this, you and I are from the same generation, that grew up mostly in the 70s and early 80s. Mm-hmm. So, there were all these like Charlie's Angels, had like those halter tops. So I painted the queen with like these great big boobs and a halter top, and, and then finished them. And then when they put on the show, somebody had completely repainted them.
Too revealing.
They painted a flat-chested queen, who was acceptable, for a kid's show. But I never stopped being interested in doing, push the envelope art. Hyena was the place where I first really got to pull out all the stops.
Oh yeah.
And whenever I show at Hyena, it was also where I had, my first solo show. It feels like going home, showing
Right.
at Hyena, because Bill Schaefer, well, not only is he an incredibly supportive person, for other artists, but he encourages people to just pull out all the stops.
Right. Yeah.
And
Definitely.
if you need to do that, sometimes you can do it there.
Right. Yeah.
So when I first heard about Hyena, so I remember asking, I can't remember who it was I asked, do you know about Hyena Gallery? And they said, oh, well, they sell art by convicted murderers. And I thought to myself, and I said, oh, but I thought to myself, well, convicted murderers create art too,
Yeah.
They do, and
It's
at least
true.
they're not murdering people while they're creating
Right.
it. They have another outlet.
That's so true. That's a good way to look at it.
Well, I mean, yeah,
It's fast. I mean, it's fast.
We're not
Yeah.
murdering people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's that's a whole.
It's an outlet.
Yeah.
It's an outlet for our dark thoughts.
Yeah. Absolutely. If they would have been doing it all along, maybe they wouldn't have been killing people.
Well,
they
exactly.
had some kind of outlet.
Exactly. And there are other, and now dark art has really grown in LA. There are a lot of venues where now it's more than acceptable. Copro,
I know.
they're also incredibly supportive.
Yeah,
is supportive of dark artists.
It's crazy, right? I mean, it's like it's. I've seen such a huge shift. I've seen people at this point. It's like I've seen people, which this bums me out, but I've seen people that are like, oh, I need to start doing dark art. Even though they're not naturally dark artists. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like, but it's like, as a movement gains steam and popularity, and there seems to be a supportive environment of people together supporting each other. Other artists want to be a part of that. And that's a sign that the movement's gaining popularity is when other people start feeling like they're outside of the group and they want to come in. And it's like the whole reason we started, or I started the podcast, and we started supporting each other as a dark art society and just supporting dark artists, each of us helping each other, was because we were the outside people from the regular art scene, or at least that's how I felt,
Yeah. And I did too. I did it at some galleries. Although when I mentioned Sella, I mean, they were very supportive, especially since it was my first, small group show.
Yeah.
They just weren't oriented toward that type
right.
of art.
Right.
Which was fine.
Yeah.
But they were. I was like absolutely so grateful to them for giving me that opportunity, because it was early on, an opportunity to do something more than one painting for a large group show.
Yeah.
And I continued to show with them for years afterwards. And actually, Daniel and I had a dual show there.
Really?
Yeah, in 2013. And
with his Frankenstein machines?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
We called it Enlightenment because we wanted to do something where the Frankenstein machines would complement my art. And so I got the idea of, okay, when did people start using, well, first there was Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, who wrote that book in the 18 teens, I think, so then I started thinking about the scientists, Galvani and Volta, who, their electricity was used to see if animals could come back to life.
Oh, wow.
And then I thought, well, if we're doing Galvani and Volta, who else can we do from that time period? Well, let's do James Watt, the Scottish guy who invented the steam, or who perfected the steam engine. And, Ben Franklin, why not him? I found out about this group that I never knew anything about called the Hellfire Club.
Yeah.
Ben Franklin and, a bunch of, sort of rich guys would, go into these caves and have wild parties. And so I actually did a piece about that. I did a piece about the Lunar Society. It was a group of intellectuals and scientists, who produce work together and, met together. And so our show was a sort of a combination of, 18th, 19th century science and the Frankenstein machines.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, it was really great. It was really great to do a show together.
Yeah, that's
like
really
that.
cool. That must have
Yeah.
been super fun.
It was. It was.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you have? I know you've got shows, a show coming up, or you've got two shows coming up, or probably more than two shows. I know you have
Well, no, just two for right now.
okay.
I have the Blab show, which you're also going to be in.
Which I haven't started. I have to do
yeah,
I have to do I don't even have an idea for my piece yet. It's like it was like one of those things where I was like, oh shit. Monty emailed me. I was like, oh, I knew I shouldn't have said yes, but he's such a nice guy, and I've done the Blab show for so long. I just have to fit.
Another really supportive person.
Yeah, super cool. Super cool guy. So I'll probably just do something small, maybe just quick. But man, it's bad time.
Yeah, but you've got a month, I think.
Yeah, but I've got a month, and I've got a whole other show I'm painting for, and I have a bunch of tool posters I got to fit. I got so much stuff to do. It's ridiculous. But
you've always got a ton of stuff. I remember when the cartoonist Terry Moore, who did Strangers in Paradise, the comic book series that I used to read, he was interviewed, and he said, becoming well known just means more work.
Yeah. I know it's so true. But anyway, so after Blab, what do you have?
After Blab, I'm scheduled to be a featured artist at Lalou's in October.
Oh, that's great. So, what's the date? What's the
I think it's October 8th. I have to double check.
Damn it. That's the same night as my show.
Oh man, yeah. I was kind of worried about that. But you know what? You send people to my show, I'll send people.
A lot of people, you hear people like, yeah, we they show hop. They go from show to show. Yeah. You know who else has a show that night is Travis Louis.
Oh no. Well, we'll just send each other,
He said he's going to try and get his change, but I don't know if he can. He's going to try and get it moved a day earlier. But
I might, I'll talk to I mean, it's a show with other people in it, and I don't know if
Yeah, people. I
don't know if they can move it. People are traveling.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like I got people coming in from out of town for it, so it's like I can't. But people like I just said, people jump around to shows and stuff.
Yeah. So hopefully, people will just be running around, looking at dark art all night.
I mean, think about how cool that is. There's 3 dark art shows in one night.
Yep.
You
can't get
pretty
more
amazing
than that.
Yeah.
And if it's too close to Halloween, then it's
right.
Then I don't know. I think it helps to get people all excited, psyched for Halloween. Earlier in the month. So
yeah, that's always the issue with October shows, is you don't want to be too close to Halloween, because then people they won't go because they're going to Halloween parties and stuff. So it's like you gotta better to do it early though. So what's the theme of your show in October? Is there a theme, or is it just like a bunch of pieces? Or
right now it's a bunch of pieces, and I'm going to try to come up with a name. I think I might have to come up with a name for it, or something that sort of links them all together.
Yeah, or find what's common about them.
Yeah, I mean there is I'm doing 5 pieces. 4 of the 5 are historical, subject matter, and the 5th one is sort of a fantasy, but it's a little reminiscent of medieval blacksmithing. So I could. So I might come up with a theme that is semi-historical, When I had my solo show at Hyena, I called it the Bleeding Encyclopedia.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. Because
I went to that show.
Yeah, I saw you and Christopher Ulrich there.
Right.
You guys there.
Yes, that was great. That was a great show.
A lot of it most of it was historical. There was a piece about Charles Darwin. There's a piece about Burke and Hare. The guys in Edinburgh, Scotland, and murdered 16 people so they could sell their bodies to anatomists. There was a piece about chimney sweeps. There was a piece about Ivar the Boneless, the Viking. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. You're mentioning them and I'm remembering them now. Your stuff would be really well suited for a book too.
that's what everybody keeps
And
saying.
that
And
would be like you going full circle back to publishing, and
yes,
you have connections to publishing, so it's possible to be able to pitch to someone too and actually get it like published by a book publisher instead of doing it like me and spending a ton of money and publishing it yourself.
well, my connections in publishing are really old, and they're not really in comic people, who are involved
Yeah.
in comics. So hopefully, they can help me find a publisher. I'd love to have a publisher. I did here. I'll show you this. I have this. I did a comic book in 2016. It's called Darth Baby,
No
and
way. I didn't know that.
well, not many people know because I didn't sell it very widely. It's obviously got copyright issues. So, so I self-published it, but it's about when I was 13 years old, I had a crush on Darth Vader. I just thought he was the hottest thing walking. And
Oh
I
yes,
had a crush on
you're a
him.
dark art person for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think when you're 13, you kind of, boys aren't really that interested in, nobody's that interested in really dating yet at that age.
All right.
Maybe a little bit, but not that much. And so, a fantasy character is the perfect person to have a crush on.
Right.
When you're
That's
sort of
true.
in between childhood and teenhood.
Yeah.
So, so I wrote this whole comic book about, so I sold it in a few places. But yeah, I have ideas for more books. So I actually, going forward after the La Luz show, I'm going to start working on some ideas for books. And one, I want to do oil paintings for the spreads.
Oh, cool.
So there are other artists who do that. They do, non-comic book, conventional, they don't always use ink and
Right.
Dr. Martin's inks. Yeah. So, one artist I love is Dave Mckean. Have you
Oh
ever seen
yeah.
him?
Yeah, he's great.
No, he's somebody who, every panel in a comic book he's in, it looks like an individual fine art work of fine
Right.
art. It blew my mind. When I first saw Dave Mckean in the 1990s, I went to St. Mark's Comics and I said, can you recommend something for me that I've never read? Just something that everybody thinks is great, but I haven't read that many comics. So they gave me Sandman.
Oh,
And that
cool.
was when I discovered his work. And so then I started, buying more books of his. He's just one of my favorite fine artists of all time. And his work is so good. One reason I came to something like oil painting so late is I just thought, when I was in my 30s, when I was younger, I just thought I'll never be able to do that. That's somebody who's trained in fine art. I could never do that. And that's one reason I started with t-shirts. And when I started say, okay, how can I get more art out there? I thought, well, t-shirts, because t-shirts are more design. It's more
Right.
drawing. It's more, I can do designs in Illustrator and Photoshop, because I can't paint. But then when I learned how to paint with oils, I just fell in love with it. And I'm really glad I, wasn't so intimidated by the work that I first saw that I never even tried it.
Yeah, yeah. That's how it was for me too. I was like, I mean, I've always wanted to paint in oils, but you know, it's hard to do at first, and it just is, figuring out drying times and all that stuff. And but once, so I started with acrylics because it's like, okay, it's water. You use water for your medium. That's all I was doing. Water, thin it down, it dries in a few minutes, and you just kind of keep layering stuff. That
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. That's easy. And but then and then you switch to oils, and then it's frustrating. But once you get it, it's like, oh, it all just kind of clicks. And then I just never went back to it after that. I dabbled a little bit, but it's like I can make it work the way I want to now, and I don't feel any need to do it any other way now.
I'm starting to prefer it. I love pen and ink, and
Yeah, pen and ink's great.
if I
Oh.
need to color a work of pen and ink with watercolor, I'll do it. And I've done some work for galleries, in ink and watercolor, but
Mm-hmm.
I like the outcome I get with oil paint better. And I actually personally find it easier than watercolor, because
What?
watercolor is very hard to correct if you make a
Yeah,
mistake.
watercolor is.
Yeah.
I always say that it's like the hardest medium. It's the one medium that I feel like I never really well, between drawing, pen and ink, or graphite, pen and ink, oil painting, and acrylic painting, and sculpture, watercolor is like the one, and digital. Watercolor is the one I gave up on. I never, was able to master it or even come close to mastering it. So it's like people like Steve Clef, again, I mentioned him. He's really great. I don't know if you've seen his stuff. He's been on the show. This stuff's really cool, his watercolor stuff. And it's it's impossible to fix if you mess it up. You have to get it right the first time.
Yeah, it's very hard. I mean, there have been times when I've fixed parts of a watercolor painting with either a scrubber brush or I read about this somewhere on the internet. You can use those Mr. Clean magic erasers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, especially if you're starting with just white watercolor paper, you can,
right.
It sort of bleaches out the color.
Ah.
But you have to be careful. It has to be like damp, not wet. Otherwise, the bleach and it will just.
Wow. Good to know. That's good to know.
It's a really useful tip that I just found on the internet.
I wonder if Steve knows about that. I'm going to tell him.
I don't know. You might not need Mr. Clean magic erasers.
That's true. That's true. He's probably beyond that stage.
Right. He's beyond his Mr. Clean stage. That'll become like the new thing in watercolor, getting past the Mr. Clean stage.
Everybody goes through their Mr. Clean eraser stage.
That's right.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. Is there any last words? Is there anything else you'd want to promote or before we go?
I can't think. Well, I've mentioned the 2 shows I'm going to be in, and I would just like to, I'd like to thank all the people, all the, the gallery curators that I've worked with who have, been so supportive getting me started. That, LA just has some wonderful supportive gallery owners.
Right. Everyone's always giving LA like saying how phony and shitty the people are. And it's like, there's so many cool people that I know in LA that it's like, you're just hanging out with the wrong people. If you think LA is full of assholes, it's like, no way, man. There's like some of the coolest people I know are in LA.
Yep. I agree. It's the art community is very supportive.
The art community is amazing.
I find that artists, share techniques with each other, and they
go to each other's shows. And
I mean, the Dark Art Society is a perfect example of that. I mean, one reason I was really excited about coming on this podcast is how much this podcast has done for me in terms of not making me feel like an amateur. Like when you develop your own techniques, you think to yourself, oh well, the pros probably don't do it like this. This is probably just really amateurish. But then on the podcast, I started to hear artists talk about the way they do things and their own insecurities that they had when they were starting, and their own special techniques they developed with, just household items that work for them, and I was just like, oh, so I'm not such a loser as I thought I was.
It's like you get
doing okay.
Even like, talking to Brahm and, all these big name artists that have I love he's he's
Lori Lee Brahm also.
Oh yeah. It's like
beautiful work.
Yes. He's a legend, and he was talking all the same stuff that we all go through. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're successful or not. It's like you're still part of the same crew, kind of, you're still part of the same group or same family. It's like we all understand these things that we go through, and that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, it's been I think it helps a lot of artists, this podcast. And also there have been some really great small cooperatives that have been cropping up for dark artists. I belong to one called Nocturnum.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, Ken Carano is in charge of it. He's
cool.
Really a nice guy. Right now we're having a show called Abandoned, where the artists in the group have put on Ken put them on the Nocturnum website, pieces that are great pieces, but for whatever reason never sold.
Oh, cool.
Haven't found the right owner. So, there's a theme, from time to time that, Nocturnum does. And, Nocturnum the people have chats on Instagram. And we did our first live art group, where we all were live on Instagram. It was the first time I'd ever done it. That was a great, and another thing Nocturnum did was everybody had to do, well, not had to, but if they wanted to, they could do a giveaway of their art. And that was the first time I'd done that, so wow, Nocturnum cool. Is, it's getting people to do things that they're scared of doing.
Right.
If they have, okay, now a bunch of us are all going to do it, so I won't look like an idiot.
Yeah.
And we're like talking about how many likes or followers we got from the giveaway, and sort of comparing notes on how well it worked, and so to do that as a group, it just really boosts everybody's confidence.
Yeah.
The Dark Art Society and also these cooperatives, like Nocturnum, it's really made a difference.
Yeah, that's great.
To a lot of ours.
Yeah, community is super important, I think, especially when you're doing art, because when you're doing art, when you're an artist, it's like you're already kind of in the minority of most people, and then when you're doing dark art, you're in a minority of the minority, so having a group setting is doubly important. So it's why I've always encouraged people as well that listen to the podcast. It's like, go start your own little art group with people in your social circle or in your community. It's like, exactly. There's other people like you waiting to support you and want your support. It's a great thing. So
and I just want to mention a name that I forgot when I was talking about Hyena Gallery. Brian Bubonic, who is
Brian
Gallery.
Brian Bubonic is
didn't
awesome.
Want to talk about Hyena and talk about it without mentioning Brian, because he's super supportive. And
Brian's the coolest guy ever.
Yeah, he is.
I love Brian.
Me
Shout
too.
out Brian. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
And if you don't hang up, but you do have to say goodbye to the audience. So just say goodbye, audience. Goodbye, audience.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. And thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun. And you were right. I wasn't nervous after I got started.
It's my hidden talent I never knew I had until I needed to have it.
You're just sending out the don't get nervous vibes, just like really chilling vibes that Excellent. I picked up on.
Good. All right. Well, thanks.